West Ham weren't playing this weekend, Gonzo, so we thought, oh, well, it'll be a nice, peaceful weekend. At least we can't lose. Turns out it's not that peaceful anymore. So someone's put her foot in her mouth once more.
Yeah, and I know you're disgusted by it. I know you've even ironed yourself a new shirt and put it on and got dressed up for the occasion. So I've got my England rugby top on, so I was expecting to sit down and watch the rugby, which I can't do because we've got to go out. And as you say, Karren Brady has used her Sun column. I think she intended on making things better, but it may well have made things a little bit worse, maybe.
What's your thoughts on it all then? I assume you've read it anyway.
I did read it yesterday, and it was my initial thoughts were, obviously I read through it, and naturally I gravitated towards the seating part, which is regular watchers and listeners all know is my thing, the thing I'm most bothered about. But I do think it goes back to the fact that she had her bum smacked by Sadiq Khan. So I think the club initially started to blame the fans for what happened. And I know yourself, you didn't like the statement that came out from the stadium operators, because I read one of your tweets, and I know you suggested as much as it didn't really address crowd safety, which is we don't feel safe in there. It was all about making sure the owners are safe. I think she's got a meeting with Sadiq Khan coming up, but I think Sadiq Khan made some public comments basically saying you need to accept some responsibility for what's happening in this stadium and don't just blame us. And I actually think that's what this article was about. I think she's at a bum smacks, and I think she's trying to respond and make it sound a little bit more palatable.
Yeah, for you who don't know what Gonzo was referring to, the LS 185 had their meeting about what happened. They basically said we did all we could do. There was nothing we couldn't do. They stopped 85% of fans trying to get on the pitch. I'd like to know where the evidence for that was, because I didn't see anyone get stopped. But even if you take 85%, 4 people got on the pitch, take 85%, that means 26.67 people trying to go on. So I don't know what 0.67 people trying to get on the pitch was. Maybe someone trying to lie down with just his knees and upwards, going on the pitch and keeping his feet.
I think it might have been Sullivan. I think he's 0.76 of a person.
Yeah, maybe. But that was crap. But the whole statement about that was literally about how they could protect the directors. That was all it was. Oh, we're going to beef up security. We're going to stop fans moving about the stadium so freely. We're going to stop fans getting underneath the directors. I thought, well, this is just bollocks. For 2 years, we've been telling you this ain't safe, and the stewards are not up to it. You haven't listened. You're finally listening. But when you do finally listen, all it is about how you can keep them away from the directors. It's got nothing to do with the other 57,000. But anyway, away from that, Karren Brady's the first problem I've got. This is the big issue I've got here. She did it in the Sun. She's got paid to write this. So if she's getting paid to write it, can she genuinely mean it? Because I've seen a few people say, how come it's taking you a week to write, to speak out? This is why it's taking a week, because her Sun column comes out late Friday night. She couldn't do it on Monday because her column's not due out. So she's waited until she gets her however much pounds she gets in the Sun to write it. It's also the Sun. It's a paper frowned upon by football fans massively because of their part to play in the Hillsborough incident. How can she genuinely mean this if she's writing in the Sun for it? I don't get it. Why is it on the official website and leaving it up there, free, etc.? There's a lot of fans won't click on the Sun to read it because of their models, and that's fair play to them. I get that. And I'm kind of the same. I'm trying to avoid it if I can. But even when you go through the article, the headline is Karren Brady apologises to West Ham fans or something like that. When you click on it, all it is excuse after excuse after excuse. I think she's tried to say sorry but when she said it, she sort of has to justify a lot where, I don't know, it could just be us now going to, I think it's maybe got to the point where us fans now get pieces like this and we see right through it and we tear it to shreds and rip it all up a bit. But they brought on themselves. It's too little too late now. And half the apology isn't even for West Ham fans. It's, apologising to the Moore family, which is fair enough. But there's no apology in there for your marketing team advertising Bobby Moore merchandise 30 seconds after the applause is finished. You're not apologising for trying to make money off the back of it, are you? No, you're not. It's just, it really got me it really pissed me off this morning reading that, and I'm getting pissed off again. But do you think she meant it, Gonzo, or do you see through this now when she writes stuff like this?
You can't, when someone fibs a lot, and I use that word carefully because my kids are the other side of that door. When somebody fibs, funny enough, we talk about my kids. If my kids say they're going to clean their room and then they don't clean their room, and then they say, oh, you know, can I have some chocolate? And I'll say, well, do you want to clean? Well, you got to clean your room. And I'll say, I will clean my room after I had the chocolate. You say, well, but last time you said that you didn't clean your room, and you just don't believe them. And I think that's where we are here. When we've heard so much spin and so many promises, even if you don't want to call it lies, I think it's very, very hard to believe anything that's said now. And I just think you get to a point which is the point of no return. And that line had been crossed a long, long time ago. So whatever she put out and wherever she put it out, it doesn't really matter what she said or where she said it. It's just going to be hard to believe anything, because what we want now is action, not excuses, not promises, and probably not even apologies, although a sincere apology would be, I think, appreciated if it was done in the right way. My problem has always been, and you know this about the press, is I think the current board, for instance, David Sullivan, when he uses Jim White, as I've mentioned on many times, I think he's almost targeting the casual football fan, not necessarily the West Ham fan. There are ways to speak to the West Ham fans, and you're right, the official site will work because we'll pick up on it. All the other West Ham blogs and websites will pick up on it, and it will be out there and it will reach West Ham fans. So in many respects, that's enough. So I'm always suspicious of when these statements go out in the broader media, be it The Sun or Sky Television, that I think, who are you talking to? I'm not ever convinced that they are talking to us.
I completely agree with you on that, because I'm just waiting for someone, probably Jim White on his next radio show, to say, oh, but Karren Brady's apologised to fans, etc. But it's just the Sun. I just don't get why she writes for it. That's fair enough. But when we were in the meeting with the real West Ham fans group, not a month ago, she got asked to give it up and she said no. That's fair enough. Let's accept that. But she also says she doesn't bring West Ham into it. Literally a month later, you're doing an article purely on West Ham in your Sun article. Either she doesn't listen or she doesn't care, or it's both. And I'm starting to think it's both. I thought it was don't care, but actually I think it's don't listen as well now, because she can't possibly care. She's still doing. Why is it not on the official website? That's my biggest thing about this, actually, because you said she's an apology isn't sincere, etc. But how can you even take it being genuine when she's putting it in the Sun paper and she's getting paid to write it? If someone's getting paid to write something, it can have a heartfelt, genuine thing to it. If she's on the official website, she's even got her own website. Why would she not put it on there? But she doesn't care. She's getting paid for it, and that sums up her and the board perfectly. Not interested unless there's a little bit of coin for her. She's got the coin in the back pocket. She's happy to do an article on it. But the article itself, you can tear it to pieces just like that. It took me 2 seconds. We've spent in the 2016-17 season already. You're thinking, okay, that's last season, but never mind. We spent 80 million. Okay, if you're taking loan fees, etc., you're right. But why are you mentioning last season's spend and not this season's spend, right? And then she says we're spending 105 million a year on wages. Yeah, we are this season. You can't have last season's transfer spend and this season's wages. You can't do it. You're mixing it up here. You're picking. This is what it goes back to: spin, spin, spin. You're using. I just don't get it. You know, we all know they've made a profit this year in transfers, so she stepped away from that rather than just go, yeah, okay, we've made £11 million profit, or whatever. However, we have spent 105 million. But as someone said on Twitter earlier, she says something about how they've doubled their wages since they arrived, but the TV money's trebled. So it's all relevant, and as a matter of fact, your percentages are less than what the other stuff is. It's really, really pisses me off, that column, actually, because it's just the way she tries to spin stuff. And I know fine, the media, like you said, are going to pick up on the fact someone's going to quote us, oh, but they spent 80 million last season. Well, yes, but it's spin. It's just there was another part. I'm going to go read this, Gonzo. I'll let you. But are you fed up now, Gonzo, or is this, you know? is it too little, too late, or do you believe her? Does she deserve another chance, etc.?
I listen. I am not as upset about it as you clearly are, and that doesn't mean I'm not upset about lots of things at West Ham. I really am. I just don't think I'm that surprised about it. And as I say, I gravitated towards the seating bit, which has got its own. That's what I would pull apart. That's that part of it. I know she writes a Sun column. I know she gets paid for it. I'm not entirely sure she's done this to get coins. I think she's done it for the reasons that I said. I think she thinks that she's going to hit the maximum people by doing that. So my argument, as I said, is why are you trying to hit the maximum people? We don't need to hit maximum people. There are very, very clear defined group who you need to hit, and it's us lot. So yeah, I think that's why she's done it, and it's for notoriety. She does her thing. She's got other jobs. She does The Apprentice. I don't mind people doing other things at all. If you want to moonlight and do some other stuff, that's great. But when you deal with West Ham stuff, I just think keep it West Ham would be my thing on that. What I would like to talk about though is the seating, because I do think the biggest appeasement from her was on that, and it's something I desperately want, and it's not something I'm convinced about at all. So they say they're going to get top architects to look at it. What are top architects? Who are the top architects? And have these architectural engineers dealt with this sort of thing before? Because there are other stadiums where it has been done. Again, it's just another promise. So let's say that happened. What's to say the architects don't just come in and just say no? It can't be done for that budget. But the real big thing is they're not in a position to do it. And here's the really good thing, okay? Somebody said the other day, and I can't remember where I read it, so apologies. If I knew who it was, I'd credit them. They turned around and they said the difference between owning a home and renting a home. And when you rent off a landlord, yes, you are allowed to paint the walls and hang a picture up and whatnot. What you're not allowed to do is start knocking down walls and stuff like that in rented accommodation. And that's the situation we're in. But I'd actually add another layer to that. Imagine if at the same time you were in dispute with your landlord and you were suing your landlord. You are not then in a position to start dictating what happens. So they can bring these structural engineers in and these architects, and they can have all the plans in the world. They may even produce another snazzy graphic that shows the seats being moved right to the edge of the pitch. It doesn't matter if the very people they need permission from are currently involved in litigation. That's just not going to happen. So I just think it's a moot point to promise. The thing that I want more than anything, which is seats close to the pitch, particularly as that Tottenham stadium is like a flaming ghost looming towards us, you know, because it just looks mustard, that Tottenham stadium. It really does. I'd love to see those seats move closer, and I just can't see it happening for those legal reasons that I've said. We are just in dispute with the landlord. How can it ever happen?
Yeah, the other thing I was thinking about, I just had a quick look. She mentioned in it, fans are upset about the lack of difference between Upton Park and London Stadium financially. She said, we've been criticised. What did she say? Let me just word this right. She says something like, supporters have criticised why the club has not driven more revenue from the stadium move. Now, actually, not that many people have criticised the revenue. But, and then she goes on to justify it with the small season ticket prices, £99 for kids and £289 for some adults, which is fine. But it was you that told us, Karren and Mr. Sullivan, that going to the stadium would bring in all this extra revenue and stuff. We didn't make it up. It's not like they said we're moving the stadium. We went, oh, excellent, that's an extra 40 million in the transfer kitty. Nobody said that. It was you that said moving there will bring in into quarter world-class stadium and world-class players. It's what you promised. It's not, none of us have made it up. None of us have mentioned Champions League people until you mentioned it. None of us have mentioned world-class players until you mentioned it. So just turn it back on the fans and say we're getting criticised from some fans from the lack of financial revenue, only because you haven't delivered what you told us. None of us are sitting here going, oh, well, you know, Gonzo from Hammers Chat, that guy who's got no financial degree, etc., said that this would happen with the move, and it's not happening. That's not happening. We trusted you. We gave you our money and we trusted you. So it's just turning it back on the fans again. This is what I don't like. It's almost like, oh, so when she made the apologies to Trevor Brooking and the Moore family in her article, she said sorry to them for the fans, the way the fans acted and stuff. Don't blame the fans. It comes back on you. The fans acted because of the way you are acting. It's just, that article has really pissed me off, actually, because not only is it a fake apology, it's a half-arsed apology. She's still trying to pin the blame on the fan base. The same fan base that had been going before she was anywhere near West Ham, and the same fan base that will continue to go once she leaves West Ham. But they're under pressure right now. And the one thing I don't like is, it's not in her column, I've seen it on another article, I think it was in The Sun, actually. There's no quotes, to be fair, there's no quotes on this one, but it said that they're still planning on coming to the Southampton game to show support for the team. Bollocks. If you genuinely want what's best for West Ham, leave your egos behind and stay away from that stadium. Because if you turn up, all I'm going to expect is you're putting your egos first to support the team. With greatest of respect, I don't think Mark Noble is going to play worse because David Sullivan is not sitting in his chair. That's not going to happen. If you want the best for the team, stay away and let the 57,000 people in there support the team, because if you're there, it's a distraction for a lot of people. And if we go 1-0, 2-0 down, we all know what's going to happen. Whether we think it's right or whether we think it's wrong, we know what's going to happen. When they're talking about banning fans that were, I can't remember the quote on the BBC, aggravated conduct or something. What even is aggravated conduct? They're just making something up now. What's that? Anyone that went over to protest, that means they're getting a ban? I'll tell you what, if you're opening that can of worms, you better be careful, because if you start banning everybody just for chanting, it's going to backfire massively, because those fans can still get into the ground with or without a ticket in their own name. They'll all have a friend that can give them a spare ticket to get them in. And when they're in that ground, what have they got to lose? Nothing. They're banned anyway. Rant over, Gonzo. Have you got anything to find us? Anything you'd like to add to that?
No, not really. I mean, but obviously, just going on, what you just said about them not going. It's not just ego. It's pure defiance. It's defiance in as much as it's saying, why shouldn't I go? I own a club or I have shares. I will go because I am this. That's the identity they're looking at. As owners, they deserve to go, they ought to go, and they should go. And you know what? Technically, they're probably right. But this isn't a technical decision. This is about doing what's best for the team and what's best for the club. And I do think it's the only sure way of ensuring that there are no demonstrations inside the stadium, because they just don't want to run over there if they know they're not there. But it has to be announced. It has to be announced. They have to publicly announce they are not going to attend the games for the remainder of the season. The public announcement is key, because then we know it's no point sort of slinking off and doing it, because then people will assume they're there and people might run over anyway. We hear that there's security going to be there, so everybody perhaps has got the pictures in their mind of how the fans run to congregate underneath the director's box. So let's imagine that you've got the area of the director's box and the stadium is running around it. I'll try and describe it just in case you upload this to podcast. If they're coming from the flanks, the fans, to come and congregate underneath the director's box, then let's assume that the security measures are a line of stewards, or perhaps, chunkier sort of door staff type people who are more physically trained and able, let's say, then that in itself is going to cause a problem, because what you'll get is 200-300 fans on either side pushing against, I would say, a group of 10, 20 security stewards. I actually think that is more likely to inflame a situation. You get people pushing against them, and then it only takes one person to get pushed over, even takes one person to fall over, and the situation gets misunderstood, and then you actually will have violence in the stadium, which there wasn't last time. That could happen. That's feasible. That's not unrealistic to think that might happen. The best thing is to stay away. It really is.
Well, hopefully they will, but it doesn't sound like they're going to. It's not the last for us, it's this situation. But the Brady Sun column, well, she tried to do an apology and she tried to do a PR win, but it looks like it might be a PR own goal going by social media. But you can let us know in the comments below what you think of it, and if you've read it. We'll put a link to it as the Sun column below as well, so you can click on and have a read of it and see what you think. Let us know. Drop a like on the video if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new around here. But me and Gonzo will be back, and there's plenty more to talk about. That's West Ham, and we've got plenty of content coming. Also, you haven't already, and you've got an Apple product, an iPad or an iPhone, do go ahead and find us on iTunes. Just search Hammers Chat and subscribe to our channel over there. We've got a podcast up there that's not on YouTube, etc., and we'll keep putting our cups of tea up on iTunes as well. But anyway, thank you for joining us. Let us know what your thoughts are on this hang on, I've got to pop up this nasty situation. Thank you.